You're listening to She's the Business podcast.
Now, if you're a parent and you're running a one-to-one type of business, maybe you're a coach, a therapist, a professional, you might be thinking it's an absolute dream to be able to take every school holidays off, right? Well, what if it was not only just possible, but actually probable and could be a very real reality for you in a super short amount of time? Well, if that sounds like something you'd be interested in finding out more about how you might be able to do that in your business, then stay tuned. This episode is just for you.
Hi, I'm your host, Jessica Osborne, and in my 23 years of business and marketing, I've built many brands to become multi-billion-dollar companies. And just in the last 10 years, I've built 2 online businesses of my own from my dining room table with 2 little babies running around at my feet. I've made it my mission to inspire you to get out of your own way and become the successful business owner who's living the lifestyle you really desire without all the hustle. This is She's the Business podcast, made by women for women. This is your weekly dose of motivation and inspiration.
Now, my very special guest today is the lovely Kate Swann, the founder of Kate Swann Psychology. She is a practicing psychologist, a board-registered supervisor for other psychologists, and she also trains and coaches therapists and psychologists on how to run a really successful psychology practice. Now, Kate is one of my beautiful clients, and what she has done, I actually think is so unique because she helps time-poor therapists to actually reduce their working hours without sacrificing income and helps them reclaim their precious family time. In other words, take every school holidays off. And this is something that Kate has been doing herself for a large number of years, and she still does today. So, wow, if she doesn't have something to teach us all of us parents about how to have that precious family time, how to have your cake and eat it too, then I don't know who does. You're going to absolutely love the interview that I have for you with Kate today because she's sharing just a really simple 3-part approach to running or streamlining your business so that you're able to take school holidays off without sacrificing your income. So without further ado, let me play the interview for you now. Okay, and hello everybody. Welcome to today's episode. I'm here with the lovely Kate Swann, who is a psychologist and a coach for psychologists. So welcome, Kate, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on.
You're very welcome. Now, could you let us know, I mean, obviously I just gave the 1-second intro as to what you do, but I know there's a lot more than that. So could you let us know exactly, what is it that you do in your business now? How do you coach psychologists? What do you help them to achieve?
Okay, so I've been a psychologist for about 18 years and I am also a supervisor for psychologists. And I now am running training courses for psychs and counsellors and therapists so that they can cut back the hours they're spending on their business and working in their business as well as on their business, but still earn more money or still earn the same amount of money or even more, and most importantly, take school holidays off.
Wow, that sounds incredible. So taking school holidays off when you've got this sort of one-to-one business model sounds like a bit of a dream.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about that. Is it something that they can do? What is your experience with being able to take school holidays off?
Yeah, look, Jess, it is the dream. And it was the reason I went into private practice. My kids were really little and I always wanted to be a mum that was around to do school drop-offs and pickups and, make the fruit platter after school for the kids and have friends over for plays and just do all those gorgeous things that were really, really important to me. So in my mind, setting up to run my own private practice would be the way I'd be able to be really flexible with my hours. But what happened was I was really successful with my marketing from day one, and the business built so fast, I kept putting new psychs on. So in the end, I was working these enormous hours, managing the business, managing all the marketing, and also seeing quite a high client load. So even though I was taking my school holidays off, I was just stretched like you would not believe. So eventually the wheels had to fall off. I just became absolutely exhausted, and my best friend and my husband sat me down and said, enough, something has to give. So it did. I just decided, okay, I really have to restructure this so that it works for me instead of I'm working for the business. And I set about doing exactly that. It took time. It definitely took time, and quite a bit of heartache, I guess. But I got there, and where I am today, I mean, obviously my kids are grown up now, but I still take school holidays off. I work substantially less hours than I used to. And because I have streamlined my practice, so I've got all the admin, practice management stuff ticking along seamlessly in the background, all the stuff I hate doing leaves me free to actually do the work that I love, which is seeing clients. So I can see more clients, which I just love, and so I'm earning more money. It's like magic. It's amazing.
That just sounds like such an incredible shift and journey for you to go from probably what you felt like was the right way to do things in the traditional business model.
Yes.
Bring on people, book in more clients, more should make more success, right? But it's like actually it just sent you down this path of complete burnout.
It was just horrible. And I was like, I'm an early morning person, but I'd get up every morning at like 4:00 and I'd put in like 3 hours before anyone else got up in the household. And then I'd do a full day's work. And then I'd come home and, if I would either pick the kids up or a family member would pick them up or they'd be at a friend's or something. But then I'd come home and I'd make dinner, and then we'd do readers and stories and games and things. And by 7:00, I was absolutely cactus, and I had no time for my husband. I had no time for myself, and I'd just rinse, repeat. It was crazy.
Yeah. And so what do you think are the main things that, I mean, I'm sure that now you're where you are, and looking back, you're like, oh, it was just so obvious some of the things that you could change to get your time back, but also to make your business more profitable. What do you think are those challenges that psychologists or therapists are sort of dealing with right now if they're in that place where they're like, well, I'm feeling really overworked, maybe not even making the money that they expected that they'd be able to make. What do you see is really happening right now in their business?
Look, it's really, really hard for counsellors in general, and anyone really in health or allied health, we're all giving people. So when we see someone who needs us, we want to help them and give to them. So it's very easy to overgive in the work sense. And then, of course, that's also happening with family and with friends too. So it is a bit of a trap and an occupational hazard for us, and it's pretty hard for us to say no as well. I mean, if you think about it, the majority of counsellors are women, and women historically have trouble saying no.
Yeah.
That's another story. That's another interview.
Totally.
So there's that going on, and then in the current climate, what's happened is with COVID, and I'm in Melbourne, so the most locked down city in the world. But it happened worldwide that there was an enormous number of people in a lot of distress with enormous anxiety due to COVID, for whatever was going on for them. And there was a huge it felt to me like a tidal wave of clients just arriving on my doorstep. And for me, it was all the clients I had been working with over my career all came back because they needed me. And that's what I wanted them to do, but I didn't expect them all to do it at exactly the same time. So, and this happened to every psychologist, every counsellor that I know. We all just got totally overwhelmed with clients. a lot of them were really high, were like very distressed. Some of them were at risk and some of them at very high risk. But the hospital system was also overwhelmed and we couldn't get a psychiatrist appointment for anyone come hell or high water. And GPs were also overwhelmed. So we all ended up holding those clients that were maybe at risk ourselves over and above our, too high daily load and over weekends because there just wasn't anyone else to look after them and manage them through to keep them safe. So, we're a burnt out workforce, and what we've found now, we've just done, the Australian Psychological Society has just released some research they did at the beginning of the year. And that says that almost half the workforce have reduced their client numbers or got out of the workforce due to being burnt out. And the majority of that would be because of COVID.
Wow. So I'm really seeing that as like feeling like there is no other way of doing it. And so, if you're a therapist who, it's a very, it's a one-to-one service model when you're working with people. And I know that there are definitely options that people have looked into doing. And obviously some take that path of like, well, maybe I can move into doing some sort of group therapy. And that is certainly an option and it is a good one. But what we're talking about here is like maybe step one is actually looking at the business that you've already got and how can we streamline it or optimize it so that you can actually claim back some of your time. And be potentially also optimizing the hours that you're working so that you're increasing your revenue, you're actually earning more. So that's something obviously that you have figured out that you've done with your practice. And could you share with us a little bit about what you see what are those ways that you would look at in order to achieve that outcome of reducing hours but increasing, the money that you're earning?
Yeah, so I've developed a three-pronged approach. So the first thing is to streamline the sort of the background of the business so that it ticks along. So I'm talking about a lot of psychologists still don't run an electronic diary and they need to speak to a client to do an intake call and get them set up, send out paperwork. And it doesn't sound like a lot of work, but it's probably works out at, maybe half an hour to an hour per new client. So it's about setting up a practice management system that works for you. It also does all the billing, so you're not standing there with an FPOS machine at the end of the session waving it at the client who's, as they're getting their credit card, is remembering that there's something they haven't told you, but you've got another client sitting in the waiting room. And, it's really hard to wrap up the session when you're doing that sort of admin-y stuff. So it's getting that sorted out and also getting someone to answer your phone for you. So if a client needs to reschedule an appointment or just needs to leave a message for you about something, you're also dealing with stakeholders. So there's parents, if you're working with young people, there's teachers, there's other psychologists sometimes, there's psychiatrists and there's always GPs. So all those people need to be managed, and a lot of that can be done by an admin person who just does that, in the background for you and flicks you an email, which you get to between clients or in your break, and you can solve a problem in 2 seconds. Whereas if you're speaking to the client on the phone, like I don't know about other psychs, but when I speak to a client on the phone, we end up having a session. I can't contain it to like a 2-minute call. It's almost impossible.
Yes.
So all of that saves a lot of time, and also getting your invoicing package sorted out properly, all the financial background stuff, bookkeepers, accountants, all that stuff that just leaves me so cold. But, I got an email from my bookkeeper yesterday, and literally I get something from her once a month, if that, and there was just a little technical hitch of something I had to do. And I looked at it and went, oh, no. What do I have to do? And literally it took me 2 seconds. But it's great. I mean, I just do that and then she continues off doing her thing and I don't have to worry about it. I mean, it's awesome. It's so it's getting that all set up in the background so it just ticks along and you just don't have to think about it or worry about it.
It's like now, if people are thinking, well, Okay, well, that sounds lovely, but maybe I don't know whether I can afford to have an admin person, or, they've got those sort of questions. What would you say to them if they're thinking that?
Well, that's the exact reason why I never did it to start with, because I was like, no, I can't afford to do that. I need to, I had a mortgage and I had all these things, all these things I wanted to do with my family that I wanted to spend money on, and I wasn't going to spend it on like support for my practice. But what I worked out, and what is absolutely the case, is if you look at the hourly rate of your admin person versus your hourly billing rate and work out how many extra sessions you need to do a month to pay for your admin, and it's like magic. It's actually not that many, and it's easy just to pop them in because you've got the time free. So you're not dealing with that horrible admin stuff that you hate. Like I hate it so much. And instead, I'm sitting there with a gorgeous client doing my thing, and I just love that. So it just makes
swapping the low-paid admin for the actual high-paid therapy, which makes total sense. So, of course you can afford it, because you're not approaching it from where you're at right now. You're actually creating the time by having this person, and that time pays for probably more than what they would cost.
Yeah, exactly. And I did the same even with like getting a cleaner for my rooms years and years ago. I worked out, how much that's going to cost me a month and how many sessions. Well, it wasn't more than a session a month extra to pay for a cleaner that just took that, that weight off, so that I wasn't walking in and going, oh, God, I've got to spend half an hour doing the vacuuming. I just, it just belong. Give them a key and let them loose. It's awesome. So that's the sort of approach that I apply to that, and it just makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And, what I'm really hearing there is sort of a change in perspective to value your time. You're really like, well, actually my time is worth so much more than what I've been giving it. I've been doing all these things, like the finances. I'm totally aligned with you there. It's like the very first thing I outsource in my business, always the finances. Can someone else please just do that? Because it's like sticking pins in my eyes for me. I do not want to sit down and do that. But it's so good, because what we don't love, we also probably aren't that great at, and we'll be slow at it. And it's like, it's so draining. Like, why would you want to drain your energy doing something like that? Vacuuming. Oh my God. Like, let's get rid of it. Yeah, but I love that, because you actually have seen it as, instead of it being an expense, it's actually by doing this you've created an opportunity to earn more money. It's like it's not an expense going out that's costing you, it's actually created an ability to earn more. So it just sounds like an absolute no-brainer to me to be able to streamline your practice in that way. So
yes, exactly. And I'm always looking for little tweaks too. What else can I do just to make it easier and smoother?
Yeah, amazing. So you mentioned you had a 3-pronged approach, and that's number one, so streamlining.
So that's number one. And then if you go into the marketing, so it's really hard for therapists to walk around or letterbox or mail drop or email or however they're getting their marketing for their practice out. It's really hard to sell yourself for anyone, but for therapists, we're a really humble group of people, and we live under the assumption that, we really don't know what we're doing. We don't know enough, because it's an industry where the more you learn you need to learn. So you always feel like you don't know enough. And so to go and sell yourself it's excruciating. It is so hard. But, obviously that's the only way to build up a practice and build it up quickly. So I worked out how to market myself, and I kind of called it, you'd hate this, Jess, because you're so targeted, but my original marketing I called the machine gun approach. It was just set the machine gun off and fire it into every GP practice within a 10-mile radius. It was actually 5K radius, and, hit as many GPs as I could. And that just like went crazy. And I followed that up with visits to my GPs, and which I hated doing with a passion, absolutely hated it. But I worked out, how to manage those, how to make them work for me. And so these days there is no way rest assured that I would machine gun all my targets. much more much more thoughtful about it, I guess. But it's about getting that ticking over. You want the GPs in your catchment area to want to refer to you, to know that you're the person who can help them with their patients. They've got patients sitting in front of them who've got a problem. They're probably sitting there crying, feeling miserable. The GP's got 12 minutes to solve their problem. They want to have someone at their fingertips that they can say, okay, I really want you to see, Jane Smith. She's going to be able to help you. She's a terrific person. I met her a month ago, and I've had some great feedback from other patients. So you want your GPs to be doing that. And when that starts to tick over, and it's the GP's sending the client into you, and then the client's going back and to the GP, and the GP's going, oh, so how was Jane Smith? How's she been going? And the client's saying, oh, gosh, she's fantastic. It's making all the difference. So then the GP's going, okay, I've got to send more people to her. She's amazing. So you've got this great sort of flow of referrals, and they're very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Far more powerful than advertising on Google or Facebook. That's just like a cold advertising. This is word of mouth referral, and it's very, very powerful.
Yeah. And look, and that is exactly what you need as a therapist. Someone's going to actually come to you. So your local network and your area are where you're going to be getting your business from. And I think that, you touched on something like the scattergun approach or the machine gun approach. I think that there's a different layer into that. And so it'd probably be helpful to touch on that, because I'm sure there's, if we're just talking like the basic machine gun might just be something very generic going out like, hey, I exist. And that's fine. Like, that's better than doing nothing, right? Because they know that you're there. But there's also another layer that you add to that, and it'd be like, well, it's not necessarily a bad thing to reach out to them all, but it's more about telling them who you are and who you work with, right? So as a psychologist, you probably have your specializations, or you have your areas that you prefer to work in, or the area that you are where you're the best at. So, what the doctor isn't someone that you're selling to. And that's probably, I guess, a lot of what you are helping, your clients with, is like actually going to see the doctors and having those meetings. It's not about selling yourself to them. It's actually about helping them solve a problem that they have that you just described. Like, they're sitting there with a person in front of them, their patient. They want to refer them to someone and they don't know who to refer them to. So by you going in there and introducing yourself and letting them know what you do, who you help, what people they should refer to you, suddenly you've given them the knowledge that they need. Yeah. Now they are like, they're armed, they've got what they need, and they can be like, great, I know exactly who to send you to, because this person specializes in exactly your area, and I know that it's going to be a really good outcome, rather than them thinking, well, I know there's a psychologist that is kind of general, that's where I would be. For me, it's like, if you're just sort of machine gunning out, hey, I've got a psychology practice, come and send anyone to me. Well, that can work, but the doctor's going to be so much better able to refer people to you if they know more about, what sort of therapist are you? Who do you work with? What's your area of specialty? And in that case, I would definitely be reaching out to them.
It's really interesting too, because GPs are like they're general practitioners. That's what a GP does. And they're the gatekeeper for all other specialist services. And the key word being specialist. So they send, if you've got a problem with your you've broken something, you go to whatever the surgeon is, you see all the different specialty surgeons, and they feel with psychology, even though psychologists most of us can work with most things that walk into the room, most presenting issues, but they see that they need to find out who specialises in what. So exactly what you're talking about, it's so important for the GPs to know what your specialist area is. And that's the fun part for therapists, is we can go, well, I can do all sorts of work. I can work with all sorts of issues, but what I really love working with is OCD, or what I really like working with is panic attack. So then you're specialising in something and you're explaining that to a GP who goes, okay, she's a panic attack specialist. And so all my panic attack people are going to go straight to them.
Exactly. As soon as they come in, that GP's thinking straight away your name, because they're like, oh, I know who this is the right person to send this patient to.
Exactly. And it just works. It works so well. You know, GPs are just humans and they get overwhelmed by all the responsibilities they have, and they're problem solvers. So they want to solve a problem and fix a patient. And if you have the fix, they'll be wrapped.
I love that. So, I guess your second prong out of the 3-prong approach is to, just simplify down the marketing and make it feel easy, and, actually the way that you can not feel awkward, actually creating a network with your GPs, because really it's more like a partnership, isn't it? I mean, they're someone who is going to work with you.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And there's some, techniques I can share with people about how to present yourself to GPs and how to sort of make those face-to-face meetings not so scary. But yeah, they're just people. So, and then of course there's websites that's a necessary evil, and marketing materials. GPs like takeaways still. So, everyone likes need to have a brochure and a business card and, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. And obviously, that sounds like you've figured out what the formula is, so that it's easy, so that the GPs are sending people to you. And then, like you say, that sort of business system is working because they come in, they can make an appointment, which you've got somebody doing, which is great. And then you just do the actual sessions. So tell me, what is the third prong? This is sounding like a lot of sense so far.
So the third prong is working relationally with clients. And it's a term, relational psychotherapy is a term that even a lot of therapists have either never heard of or don't really understand. But really, to sort of summarize it's just about being real and genuine in session with the client. It's about not applying a step-by-step solution to the problem that they're coming in with. And a lot of the training for therapists these days is a lot about step-by-step, apply this approach and this will fix the problem for the client. But it's about just sitting with the client, waiting to hear what's coming up for them, working with the transference of sort of the energy in the room, what the client is bringing up for the therapist and what the therapist is bringing up for the client, and the history of the client, what's in the room from their background as well. So that gets a little bit technical, but it's about sitting with all of that and I guess trying not to problem solve the client, but help them sit with what they're dealing with so that they can solve the problem themselves. So, I mean, people say to me, I don't know how you can be a therapist. It must be so hard sitting all day long, listening to people's problems and trying to fix them. And I'm like, oh my God, that's not what I do. That sounds awful. There's no way I can.
Yes.
So I'm not just sitting there like some, kind of, I don't know, just having all the problems dumped on me. We're sitting there together thinking about what's going on for the client, exploring it, making sense of it, trying to understand, okay, you're feeling like this, where does this come from? All right, we talked, last year or 3 months ago, we talked about this from your childhood. I wonder if that's playing a part in what's going on for you now. So it's very much bringing together all the information the client walks in with to help them make sense of their situation and what's going on for them. And it falls in, how they're looking, what their energy level feels like to you, how they're dressed. I've got a young client who has historically always loathed herself and her body and has been very depressed. And I couldn't get her out of black. She was just a beautiful young woman wearing black all the time. And probably about a year ago, she came in and she had something that wasn't black. It was still a dark colour, but it wasn't black. And so I noticed it and she was a bit surprised. And then the next session she came in and she was wearing something slightly lighter. And so I got a bit excited and she said, I knew you'd notice. She came in earlier this week and she was wearing a white T-shirt. And I was like, oh, my God, look at you.
Wow.
It's exciting. It's just such a difference. And those, like, it's celebrating those wins and just being human, you know, to be able to sit there and go, my God, look, you go, girl. You look amazing.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's like black to white, literally. Oh, wow. So you said quite a lot in that. And I was sitting there thinking, well, you know, obviously I'm not a therapist, but as a coach, I think there's a lot of similarities is that, you know, not feeling like we have to have the answer to every problem.
Well, you're not going to have the answer. That's where it gets exhausting, isn't it? How do I solve this problem? Well, you can't.
Yeah, and it's actually about helping them to solve the problem, because otherwise, if you're the problem solver, then guess what? They're always going to need you. If you're like actually helping people to understand what's going on and helping them to be able to work through and solve their own problems, you know, with your support, then you're actually giving them a real benefit in life. But tell me a bit more about why this is such a benefit. You know, I can kind of see straight away, well, it sounds like you're sitting within your, what I call it, I'm going to say authority, maybe that's the right word, or, you know, you just being really present to, I'm here, I know that I can help people and they're coming in the room and I'm assessing it literally in live time. So it's as it's happening, you're seeing what they're doing, you're seeing the energy they've brought in, you're listening to them, and then you're responding with questions based on what's going on right in front of you. So as a therapist, and as we're talking about your approach, is like, you know, it's reducing your time, it's increasing your income, helping you take school holidays off. How does this help a therapist to reduce their time?
So I guess it's about being confident and trusting yourself that you don't have to have exactly what you were saying. You don't have to have the answers, but you can sit with the problem. And so it takes away the need to endlessly research every presenting issue that your clients bring in. So, for example, if a client, for someone who wasn't working relationally and was maybe working in a more cognitive behavioural therapy model, which is much more, can be much more prescribed, if a client was talking about a problem with maybe pulling their hair out or pulling their eyelashes or their eyebrows hairs out, you know, that sort of issue, which is quite distressing. They might be really upset and worried about it. And so you're sitting there thinking, oh, shit, I don't actually know what the, you know, protocols are for treating this. I need to go and research it all, and I'm going to have to do hours of research and work out what the model is for managing this. And then you go home and do, you know, hours and hours and hours of reading, and you come back in with all of this like idea of how I'm going to manage and the whole session planned for the client who walks in the door and says, oh, my God, my boyfriend broke up with me last night. Oh, so you're not actually talking about the hair issue. You're talking about her relationship with the boyfriend. And you're like, oh, okay, so I literally spent 3 hours doing that. I'll park it because we'll get back to it next session. But it doesn't really come up again, maybe for months, because she's, you know, much more worried about her relationship and what's going on there. It's just, this is it's such a problem and an occupational hazard for therapists that we just want to try and sort of research the bejesus out of every presenting issue. And there's so many issues. And so just trusting yourself that you've got it and you can sit with it and explore with the client. So I would sit with that client and talk about, well, what's coming up for you? What's underlying that need to pull at your hair, whether it be your eyelashes or your hair on your head? What's going on underneath that? And that's what you're dealing with, which is much meatier. It doesn't need a step-by-step sort of extinguish the behaviour. It's like, what's actually causing it? Let's talk about what's made you so anxious that this is your coping strategy.
Yes.
And there's a reason she's doing that. It's a coping strategy. So if you take the coping strategy away, how's she going to cope? It might be a terribly functional coping strategy, but it's still a coping strategy, and people need ability to cope.
I can just see straight away such a difference between what you're doing is kind of thinking, well, I don't need to know the answer to a problem. I don't need to know a treatment because I'm not a problem fixer. But although the way that you work with them is that you dive down to find the real cause of what's driving this and help them to heal that. So, yes, we do end up solving their problems. We do end up helping them to fix, but it's not through, I guess it sort of feels like a treatment-based approach where it's like, I need a formula, I need all the research, and I'm going to take the person through this sort of structure. But instead, you're kind of working with the individual to really understand, well, what is it for them? What's causing them? Yes, it might be anxiety. What's causing your anxiety? Where is the anxiety coming from? And that's not going to be based on any framework that you could research, is it? It's going to be actually, well, let's find out what it is for them. And that's what you're helping them with, because then the outcome of that will be that they stop doing that behavior because we've gone to the core root of the problem. That just sounds to me like it makes so much sense. And how much that must take away the anxiety for the therapist as well, because you're not sitting there thinking, well, I haven't researched that or I don't know that, so I've got to go home and figure it out. Instead, you're thinking, anyone can walk in the door with anything that's going on.
Exactly. And they do. But it's it takes away that frustration too. So a therapist who's using a model to work with their clients might start to get quite frustrated because clients aren't doing their homework. Clients have other things that they want to talk about, and they don't want to focus on this issue that the therapist is like, well, you walked in with this is the goal, that we fix this problem, but you're bringing all these other things and we need to fix this problem. It's about just going with what the client walks in the door with, and they walk in with something completely different out of the blue, which is very, very relevant to their life. And that's really what you're there for, is to just sit with it. And that's the part that I think takes the confidence, and that's something that I absolutely address in my course about, learning how to be patient and just sit with the problem, because that's where the magic is in therapy, and that's what actually fixes the client or lets them fix themselves.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you kind of help people to probably learn some different techniques, but it's more about how to be able to sit with something and how you figure out how to get underneath it. So maybe types of questions you might ask, or, what do you do? Do you help them role play through it so that they can kind of feel like they're...
It depends on each client. Each client is so different. So, and that's the beauty of it. Over my career, I would have seen, I don't know how many, probably thousands of people who've been referred for therapy for example, anxiety. Anxiety and depression are the two biggest referring issues. But I've never seen, so all those thousands, hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people I would have treated over the years, I've never seen two people that have come in that are the same, that their problem is the same, because we're so individual. And to me, it feels so disrespectful to be thinking or even saying to clients, oh, well, this is your problem and this is how you fix it. It's like, but what about your context? What about what's going on for you? Of course you've got anxiety. Look at your life. I'm actually just here listening to what's going on for you at the moment. But let's look at how we can sort of start to think about why you've set up your life like this and how we can start to unravel it a bit so it works better for you.
Yeah, amazing. So there's all this research, and what you're telling me is that psychologists or therapists, feel like they need to do a lot of research. And you're doing, how much research do you do these days?
So very little, actually. It's you know, I mean, I have a mentor that I work with. I have a group that I work with, and that's where we sort of nut some of these things out, and we do readings and things that are really interesting. But as far as researching the current issues that I'm dealing with in session, very little, because it's not about what the client's been referred in for. It's not about the hair pulling or the panic attack. It's about the underlying issues that are going on underneath.
Yeah, amazing. And so you kind of have just like you're saying, a different process that you're calling relational psychology. Is that what you call it? Trying to remember the right term.
I know, it's a bit of a mouthful. But it means I read the articles and do the research in sort of reading that I'm actually really interested in, not doing things that, you know, I'm like, oh my God, this is so boring.
Yeah.
Skip to the conclusion.
Yeah, so you're not going home at the end of the night thinking, oh, that person's coming in tomorrow, I need to go and research something because I need to be able to take them through.
I still get worried about it. Don't you worry. I still sit there and go, oh my God, I don't know how to treat this. And I'm like, okay, Kate, just settle down. Yeah, you actually know how to do this. Yeah.
Yes, amazing. Well, that's great. So that's your kind of, when people are able to implement these 3 different strategies into their psychology or therapy practice, you know, what are the kind of results that they might see? What could they expect in terms of, you know, how much time can they reduce, and does the outcome really look like?
Well, back to that initial research I mentioned from the Australian Psychological Society, they said that psychologists are working 17 unpaid hours each week and being paid for just 23. So if you think about 17 unpaid hours, that's 2 days a week of unpaid work. Imagine if you're a lawyer. There is no way. I mean, lawyers charge for thinking about their cases in the shower, you know. It's like there's no way you would be 2 unpaid days a week. So it's about, you know, even if you were able to halve that, what a difference that would make in your life and your ability to, I don't know, get on with your life and do the things you actually want to do, like hang out with your family.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the aim.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. Like imagine halving that. So 17, you know, we're talking probably about 9 hours a week that you either can get back, or like you say, you can swap some of that time for actually bringing on another client and being paid for it. So that's just amazing. Like what a difference even just cutting that in half would make.
It's really my aim with my course to pull all of this together so that when people are going through my course, we work on these 3 different areas, the streamlining the business, sorting out the marketing, and working relationally. And that dramatically cuts back their non-billable hours and also increases their income. And then we can all celebrate by taking school holidays off. So on that, my course runs every school term. It's an 8-week course, and it's 2 hours a week. It's live online. And during that, the space of those 8 weeks, we actually work live on those issues, and people make the changes as we go. And by the end of the term, the idea is that they'll be, you know, working less hours and have everything in place to be starting to see the results of the marketing so that they're earning more. And, of course, at the end of the term, they're planning on taking the school holidays off.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. So just one school term. So what is it, 8 weeks or 10 weeks?
It's an 8-week program.
8 week. Yeah. And to have that kind of outcome at the end where you're like, well, maybe by the end of this 8 weeks, I can be taking off the next school holidays that's coming up. I mean, I just think that's just so powerful for anyone who's a parent, who's running a business and feeling so pulled. Like we're always pulled in so many directions, I think, as a parent and a business owner. But to have that as not only a dream, but actual real possibility, and not even just a possibility, a probability, because you're going to show them how to do it. You're doing it. Yep. I mean, I find that just amazing that it can be done in, such a short time. So incredible. Well, thank you so much for sharing it with us today, Kate.
My pleasure. It's my pleasure.
A really great chat. Is there anything that you would love to, a final, I don't know, bit of advice or takeaway comment for anybody who's sort of been listening thinking, wow, I just, I've been in this place, stagnated in my therapy practice, or feeling like I'm stuck.
I know how that feels. Just do it. You've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And if you're thinking that an 8-week course is just too much to get started with, on my website, I've got just some 40-minute training that you can have a look at that might just be able to give you the impetus to get going yourself. And if you need help, I'm there and you can book in next term.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, well, great. I'll link that up. If you send me the link, Kate, I'll put that in the show notes. So you can jump in and do that training. I'm guessing it's something that they can just register for and do on your website. So there's no...
It's just a freebie, and I'm just releasing another training that has a couple of continuing professional development points as well. That's a freebie as well, just to sort of help people get going and give them something to work on.
Oh, that's amazing. It's so generous of you as well. So definitely dive in and grab Kate's training there, because I'm sure she's going into a bit more detail for you than what we've touched on today. But what an amazing thing to think that, what is actually possible. Now, if they'd like to connect with you, on your social media or follow you other places, where's the best place to find you?
On Facebook, Kate Swann Psychology, Swann with 2 N's, and my website, kateswann.com.au.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kate. I've loved this chat today and just opening our eyes up. Even though I'm not a therapist or a psychologist, I think there's a lot of takeaway points for any of us in our business, especially if we're doing any sort of one-to-one work. What are the things that Kate has spoken about today that we could actually start looking at or applying in our business? Because it's not unique just to therapists, especially the first couple of points there that you made are definitely general for most businesses, that we could take something out of that. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me on, Jess. Much appreciated.
Very, very welcome. If you're a coach, a consultant, or an online service provider, and you're sick of relying on referrals or feeling really overworked and underpaid for the time that you're putting into your business, and really just want to feel like you're on the path to having a fulfilling high-income business that allows you to work part-time hours so you can spend more time with your family, for yourself, and actually enjoy your life, then I have the solution for you. My program, Business Jam, contains my proven strategy for attracting high-quality clients to really profitable and saleable services that also fit your lifestyle needs, so that you've created a game that you can win in your business, and it actually gets you to the outcome that you set out to create when you first started. Now, this is for you, whether you've been in business for 10 years, 20 years, or even if it's year one, then this is your core marketing strategy foundation that helps you to focus on the right things, stop focusing on all of the wrong things and wasting all of your time with activities that you don't need to be doing. So we get you streamlined and attracting in exactly what you need to have the business outcome that you desire. Business Jam is not open right now, but the waitlist is open. So head to jessicaosborne.com/waitlist and put your name down to get on my priority waitlist for Business Jam. So you're first to hear about it when we're opening doors next. And I always save a few extra special things just for the people who are on my waitlist. So that could be you. So head over to jessicaosborne.com/waitlist to get your name on the priority waitlist for Business Jam. And you'll be first to hear all about it when we're opening up next.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of She's a Business podcast. I hope that you've been enjoying it as much as I have in creating the content to bring to you. So I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate your presence and your attention. Now, if you love the podcast, or maybe you just loved today's episode, then I would absolutely appreciate it if you would go to Apple Podcasts, scroll down, hit the 5 stars, and then leave me a short review about what it was that you really enjoyed in this episode, or maybe in the podcast overall. And when I receive those reviews, then I love to give those reviewers a shout out on my future podcast episodes. So you never know, you may hear your name getting a shout out in a future episode if you do that. So thank you once again for your time, and I'll see you next time on She's the Business.